Welcome everyone to Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, where we are bringing together experts, female physiology, training, nutrition, health coaches, and nutritionists. It goes on, but today we are so lucky to have Courtney Townley joining us. And Courtney, man, like she has been helping women for the past 20 years and helping women take better care of themselves with consistency. She has done this through her awesome podcast, which I've been listening to. Grace and Grit is the name of her business, which we're going to get into. And really what she's doing is she's helping us understand health and expand the definition of what that really means beyond what diet and exercise is. So like, how do we be in whole health? So this is what I'm excited about getting into the conversation today with Courtney. So first, hello. I'm going to say more about you, but anyways, hello.
No, hello. I'm so happy to be here.
I just like sometimes launch in and it's because really what you're bringing to women is just so completely awesome. And I'm going to just say a couple more things about you just to let people know how you've come to where you are. So you're a certified nutrition coach with Precision Nutrition. And what's interesting about Precision Nutrition is that they really dial into the behavioral change and the science of that. So again, thinking beyond just what you're consuming, but why are we consuming? Courtney is a certified personal trainer and with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. She's a certified life coach and basically multifaceted, brings it all together and has such cool things within her business. I love the Rumble. I love like going onto your website and I'm so stoked about your Rumble thing. So we'll have
my membership is called Rumble and Rise. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the Rumble part, but I just the whole. Well, this is where I want to start. Actually, did I miss anything? Should I let?
No, I think that's great. Yeah,
that's good. Well, This is where I want to start because I think that it really will help us understand where you come from and how you're supporting women if we understand the grace and the grit.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Yeah. So I think there's two really big sides to that conversation. Like the first thing I'll mention is that just looking through the lens of movement itself, there's a very grace-filled side to movement and there's a very gritty side to movement. And neither one is better. That we really, if you think about it, if we can learn how to tap into the grace and the grit of movement, we actually become better movers. So one of the things that I always talk about is that, early on in my movement career, I was a dancer. And later in life, I got really heavily involved in strength training and gymnastics work and things that were just completely different from my dance experience. Yeah. And what's so cool about that is that it really evolved me as a dancer. Like I actually ended up having more movement capacity by tapping into different areas of movement and not just staying in my specialized field. And how this carries over into my coaching practice is that there is a very grace-filled side to self-care and there is a very gritty side to self-care. And the grace side is the self-respect and the self-worth that you are worth your own time and energy, right? And that you are able to forgive yourself for past mistakes and you are able to be compassionate with yourself when you mess up. And then the gritty side of self-care is actually showing up to do the work that you've called yourself to do. And that's not always easy and fun or convenient or any of the things. Sometimes it is, often it isn't. And so my one of the main principles that guides my work is that you need both grace and grit in order to honor the wholeness of who you are. And nobody can really tell you where that sweet spot is. That is a journey of personal discovery and why I'm such an advocate that health is really a journey of self-leadership because we have to lead ourselves back home. We can work with mentors and gurus and teachers to sort of, show us some skills and develop some things to help us get there. But really the journey has to be self-led. So that's kind of an overall idea.
No, I absolutely love it because it's it's really empowering is what you're doing. You're, right? Because I love it that you brought it into a discussion of, okay, so we have coaches and we have those that guide us. And yet it is on us to understand and tap into and go through something. So can you share with us a little bit more, like one of the things that's really important to you, and that you talk a lot about, and I encourage people to look at that podcast, like go to some of the topics, and we're going to get into some more of them in the podcast, and is this mental health and the physical health and the intersection, and how, we're better, we're stronger if we can really find that push and pull between those two things. And then how do you, okay, so it's like a two-part question.
Yeah.
And how do you support your people to kind of keep going and tapping into knowing the difference of when it's time to take a break and focus on that mental component or push forward in that physical, because just get to the start line kind of idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll start by saying that, health is so multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, of course it's physical, right? And that's where we get into sort of, the data of blood profiles and hormone panels and all of the things, and physical strength. There's a lot to that. But what I see so many women doing in this age of time is that they are pursuing physical health at the expense of all these other dimensions of health. And other dimensions include emotional health, mental health, relationship health, your spiritual health, environmental health, right? There's a really big conversation under the health umbrella. And when we tend to get very rigid about just one arena of health, it costs us a lot in the other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it really is such a personal thing to get aware of where you are showing up or not showing up in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And do you like your reasons for how you're showing up and not showing up? Do you like the unbalance that you may be experiencing right now? Sometimes you will, like if you're getting ready for an athletic event, you might be totally cool with not putting so much energy in some other areas, and you're really focusing on physical health. But there will be other times of the year where that doesn't feel so satisfying to you. It feels actually very misaligned.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a big part of self-leadership is kind of, number one, staying hyper aware of where you're putting your time and attention, and also taking radical responsibility for where you may need to recalibrate to bring yourself closer to center with yourself. And I can't tell you exactly where that spot is, but I can certainly guide you there.
Right. And you talk about, and I think like on that, you talk about actually looking at, I think you actually say something like, a lot of you what you're putting in your planner is absolutely insane. Like, and talk, can you tell us and share with us some of your thinking around that? Because what you're talking about, and if I'm hearing you correctly, is such a deliberate approach to what we're about and what we're taking on. And so like the planner is just perfect because then you look at it.
Yeah. So I think to even start that process, you have to know your own standards for living and your own values. Because if you don't know those things, and if you don't remind yourself often and much about what those things are, you will have so much opportunity to fill your plate with things that really aren't that important to you. Right? And then you get into a space of overwhelm and resentment and really just feeling like you're barely keeping your head above water. And yet it's also a choice, right? To not be reminding yourself of those things. So when you are really clear on what you want your life to be about and what is most important to you, it's much easier to trim the fat. And what I mean by that is get rid of the things in your life that really aren't serving those bigger purposes, those bigger values. And what I see so many women doing when they're pursuing health, trying to improve their health, is they're operating as if it's an exercise in addition, where really it's an exercise in subtraction. and subtracting is not something we like doing. We want to do all things all the time with all people in all spaces and places.
You know these listeners, right?
Oh yeah, I am this listener, right?
Exactly. Here we are.
I always tell people the whole reason I run this business is for very selfish reasons. I mean, I am very passionate about women's health, but I speak to it because I rumble with all the same things.
Right.
Right. And so when we actually learn how to constrain our choices and really live in alignment with our truest and deepest values, there is a sense of peace that comes from that nothing else can really provide us with.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was listening to somebody speak about sort of this topic, but really what you're saying is that, we kind of go onto this bridge of whatever it is that we're doing and whatever it is that we're taking on. And these values are our guardrails, to kind of keep us on a path. Yeah. And it's like, how many times I'm jumping into the water all the time. I just see myself flailing. There she goes, flying off the bridge again. Right? Is it kind of like that?
But yes, and I love your approach. Like, number one, I love that analogy of the bridge, and these are our guardrails. And it is funny, right? How my husband always calls me a raccoon. Like I have shiny object syndrome because I'm a very excitable creature. I love adventure. I love new experiences. Yeah. And that can get me into a lot of trouble really quickly if I don't learn to constrain and remind myself where I really am choosing for my focus to be.
Right. And so it's, being able to say no and confidently no.
That's being able to say no. And also, even if you say yes and recognize that yes was a misaligned choice, you can always go back and make another choice. Right. You can always say, I actually need to bow out of this commitment.
Right.
Because I'm not going to be able to show up fully here or fully with the things that I say are so important to me. So giving yourself permission to make a new decision when you realize the original decision isn't really working out the way you wanted it to.
So this is really interesting because, within our population that are listening, we're athletes. We're really goal-oriented humans.
Yeah.
Race is there. And what I see for a lot of athletes is that we drive ourselves into, but I had that commitment. How do you support, women that are really specific, like driving hard and, to this commitment to the detriment of themselves? And what are the tools that you can help us understand or tap into, or that we can come to somebody like you and deal with and face?
Yeah. So I think one of the most simple and profound exercises that I do with all of my clients is we first and foremost get very clear on who they're committing to becoming. So what is the woman, the version of you that you really aspire to be? Okay. So we get clear on the direction. Right. We know the direction she wants to head. And the goals are really the signposts along the way. They should fit into that direction. Right. Letting you know you're headed in the right direction. And I got to tell you, a lot of times I work with women who have goals that are not in alignment at all with the direction they say they want to head.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah.
Right. So that's something definitely to look at, because that's never going to feel peaceful, or it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel like an alignment to you. So just understanding how your goals serve the identity you really want to be embodying. Right. And then showing up to do the things that will help move you in that direction. And often I will say again, just that sometimes those goals aren't necessarily aligned with that identity. And that's something worth looking at.
Right. And you had spoken earlier in this conversation about the intersectionality of all of our identities. And how does that look when you're working with women and and identifying what they want to become? How do you see that happening when it's like, well, I'm we're talking women from 35 to 60 here. We have the full range. And so we have some people that are new moms, or young children to teenagers, and a lot of women are coming into the prime of their career. They've got something to say, and here they go. And how does that push and the pull between that go, and then, yeah.
Well, I think a big part of it is that identities change.
Yeah.
And a lot of women are not giving themselves the permission to allow that shift to happen. So because they had a certain identity in their 20s and 30s, they're trying to carry that into their 40s and 50s, even though it doesn't fit anymore. And I see this all the time. I see women clinging to these identities of the past, which are honestly preventing them from really moving into the identity they want for their future. But it's a transition. Transitions are rough. Like, right? They're uncomfortable. And I think
embrace that.
Yeah, it is something to be embraced. It's something to, once you see it for what it is, it's definitely a more graceful transition. But without the awareness, I see a lot of women struggling unnecessarily because they don't necessarily see what's happening. They're just trying to chase their past identity. And that can be hugely problematic, right? Because it may not even serve who they want to be at this age and stage of life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. So, okay. So now we say in our perfect scenario, we now know what we want to become. We've got it. That was a lot of work. We're now on the path, and we are now ready to rumble, as you would say. Yeah. So how do we start taking these things on? And like, is it like, okay, let's clear the decks and everything all in, or is it something different?
Taking what on specifically?
Well, yeah. So I know that for example, I want to race. I want to get to some start line, but it's more about health. I don't want to feel strong in my body. So how do what are some of the first things that I need to start doing? And I guess I'm trying to bring you into, I know something you also talk about quite eloquently and passionately, and it's like this idea of habits or taking small things.
Yeah. So first, if a woman says to me, I want to become stronger, right? I want to physically feel stronger and more capable in my body. Yeah. Awesome. So let's identify why you aren't there right now. Right? So let's get really clear on your current reality, right? Like what is maybe in the way of you not feeling that way right now. And so we can identify where the gaps are. Yeah. And I will be very honest with you, there's usually a lot of gaps, right? And women are usually very hyper aware of where their gaps are. Women are awesome at identifying, right, where their life is maybe falling a little short of where they want it to be. Yeah. So we identify the gaps. And then what we do is we start creating a list of what is the obstacle to filling that gap. So let's just say a woman is so busy, she doesn't have time to go to the gym or do the workout that she wants to do, right? Well, the obstacle that's in the way is time. So then we need to create strategies for overcoming that obstacle. And by the way, I never tell women what to do. I dig for their own wisdom. Yeah. So I'll ask her, tell me 3 simple things you could do to create more time in your schedule, right? And it might take a lot of poking and prodding, but she eventually will come up with 3 things. Like there's an obligation she can let go of. She could get up 30 minutes earlier, right? She will come up with some strategies. And then we just decide what gap and what strategy for filling that gap do we want to focus on first? Because you can't try to change your life overnight. We know that doesn't work, right? We know that this is a lot of times what the diet industry is pushing on women, like make these massive changes to your diet and it'll change your life forever. Well, no, it doesn't. No. It might change your life temporarily, but eventually, because of the way you went about trying to change your behavior, it's not going to stick. So we give ourselves permission to start small, which I will say, especially to this audience, athletes and very driven women are not so good at doing. Because we know we're capable, we know we've accomplished great things. And so in a way, we're almost convincing ourselves that starting small means it's like a statement on our identity, like we're not capable or we're not strong enough. And I argue with women that giving yourself permission to start small actually means you're probably serious about succeeding this time. That's what it means.
I really like that.
Me too.
Yeah, I really like that because it is the permission. It is the compassion, like to bring it back to where you started and talking about compassion, the grace that we have to give ourselves to kind of like keep bumping up against that guardrail, and not try to just dive right in. Like that's what I have athletes that come to me and it's like, okay, I want to do an Ironman. And I'm like, okay, so, how's your 10K race? Like we have to first get to a start line, but it's the big things. It's the bigger house, the bigger everything. And what we have to do is, if I'm hearing you correctly, is actually slow down and say, okay, well, what's in alignment with your values? What is, first of all, is it going to with who do you become?
Yeah. Is the commitment you're making in line with your values?
Mm-hmm.
Is it actually a small enough initial step that you will actually show up to do it? Not just once, not just for a few weeks, but on the regular.
Yeah.
Right. And also, is it, is it something that you feel is just true to who you are at this place in life? And recognizing that if the commitment is something really big, like doing an Ironman, right? That's a huge commitment. It is going to cost you,
right,
in other areas of your life, because there are a lot of resources that are very limited. Although renewable, they're limited: time, energy, willpower, focus. So if we're giving a lot of those resources to one arena, like an athletic pursuit, we also have to assume some responsibility that's going to pull resources away from some other areas. Right? That's just the way the math works.
Yeah, the push and the pull in a different way. We talk so much in athlete worlds of the push and the pull of training. What I love, what you're reminding us all, is really to be honest with ourselves.
Honesty is everything.
And to really look at that and being like, okay, so really, what does this mean? Yeah.
Well, and where we were talking earlier about like teachers and coaches sort of helping you to accomplish something.
Yeah.
You have to remember that coaches and trainers and a lot of specialists are exactly that. They are helping you in a very special focus of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But it is your job to take the information they're giving you and weigh it against the wholeness of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, how does this piece of information or this strategy or this skill set actually fit into the wholeness of my life? And you may decide it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? But they are only going to offer you the information based on what the pursuit in that special area is.
Yeah. And what I love, one of the interesting things that I'm seeing is that traditionally within the athletic world, coaches are very focused on the physical way of being.
Sure.
And we're starting to see, especially, I'd like to say this, maybe it's true or maybe it's not. But like, as women become more sport specific coaches, we're really helping and understanding what health coaches and the all around, like what you've been doing and bringing to women who also are doing sport, obviously. But that wholeness, we haven't done that so well. And so to ensure that, what you're doing is having those conversations of us as whole athletes coming in. Can you just tell us a little bit more? Okay, tell us about what, if somebody comes to you, says, okay, yeah, I'm a runner, and I know, and I've got a running coach, and she's going to give me a program. What do you do? How do you help that process in working with you and within your groups?
Yeah. I would say it's, if I have specifically an athlete who's already working with a coach, right, to get ready for their event or build skill set in certain area, I would ask her, number one, why are you hiring? Like, what else do you want? Like, there's something that you're not getting from that specific, coach or trainer. What else do you want? And usually it's the wholeness of their life. They're trying to find their sweet spot in their own life, and they're struggling to do that. Right. And so we just get really clear again on that future vision of who they're stepping in, who they're really committed to becoming, and how is the way they're living their life right now moving them closer or further away from that. And then I give them a lot of tools and strategies to get very honest with themselves and to start making some decisions that will actually make them feel like they truly are living in alignment with who they want to be.
Right.
So it's, I would say it is that guiding them into that wholeness piece.
Yeah.
And growing them as a woman, not just an athlete.
Yeah.
Growing them as a human.
Yeah. And the people that are coming to you are up to something. They're up to something to challenge themselves and being guided to do that. I absolutely love it. Wow. We're going to run out of time and I have a few rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Are you ready?
I am so ready.
Okay, good. So, first one, give us one moment of courage, like your courage, one thing that you have experienced that you're like, I had to have courage.
One moment of courage. I would say for me, one moment of courage was to become a mother. Because it wasn't something that, a lot of women like dream about being a mom from the second they were a little kid, a little girl. And I just was never that way. And so stepping into deciding to become a mother and then actually having a child that I was responsible for every single day was a moment of courage. And it's a moment of courage every day getting up and being the best mom I can be, I would say it was definitely a moment of courage.
Yeah. I hear to that. Keeping them alive.
All right.
My job is to keep you safe and keep you alive.
Yeah.
Love you to bits. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Tell us one thing that you are grateful for right now.
Oh, what am I grateful for right now? I'm grateful for what I do in the world. Like, I'm so grateful, honestly, every day for what I have chosen to make my life's work. And because it feeds me as much as I know it feeds other people. It's just such a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of give and there's a lot of taking back, sort of being receiving. And I'm so grateful for that.
I think that speaks to your ability as a coach to be forever learning and to be forever in a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? It is forever learning. Right. And I also think that, at this stage of my career, like coaching is so much about showing people their own minds and who they are rather than just telling them. Right. Which I think there's a big difference between coaches who tell versus coaches who bring people back to their own wisdom.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Like really, we can't keep giving recipes out and just saying, okay, well, here's your plan. This is your diet. How you're going to eat every day.
Yeah.
Here's your training plan. And, you don't have to think anymore. It's not good enough.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as a culture, I feel like we understand like the beauty of children who think for themselves. Like we want to raise kids who think for themselves. And then yet when it comes to health, we've conditioned, especially women, to think something so different. Like you always need someone else telling you what to do because you're just not smart enough living in your own body to figure that out. Right. And that's just is not true. Like that's a huge fallacy.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm pausing because I think it's so impactful that idea. And I hope that we all take that on.
Yeah.
That we can.
Yeah. I will tell you, I'm a rule follower. Like my whole life, I love people telling me what to do. And the reason I like people telling me what to do is because it's easier, but it's not nearly as gratifying as carving your own pathway. Right. Yeah. So starting my own business, 15 years ago and having to, rumble with that and really be a leader in that, has rewarded me in so many ways that had I always been looking for someone else to tell me what to do, I wouldn't have never tasted that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Oh, I love that. Okay. I have one more question.
Yeah, go. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
All right. What is one piece of advice that you want to keep saying to yourself? And this is, specific to perimenopause or in postmenopause or, wherever. What is one thing that you just have to keep reminding yourself and telling yourself?
Yeah. This is such an invitation. That's what I tell myself all the time, because it is so easy to get caught up in the frustration and the resentment and the irritation of going through this hormonal shift. But I was actually just having a conversation with a colleague of mine this morning that, it is, at this age and stage of life, we are typically carrying the most responsibility and the most stress that we've ever carried. And our hormones that help us to manage stress are starting to depart. They're leaving the party.
Yeah.
And so it is such an invitation to us to learn how to be in relationship with stress differently and renovate our lives to accommodate stress in healthier ways. And so I always, when I find myself getting really frustrated or irritated about the aging process, or specifically about perimenopause, which I am definitely in the throes of, I just always come back to, this is such an invitation.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because it reframes the whole thing, doesn't it?
It totally reframes it.
Yeah, totally reframes it. Okay, so we're coming quickly to the end. Oh my goodness, you have provided everybody who's listening with a free gift of the healthiest year yet. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so healthiest year yet is really so much of what we've spoken to today in this interview, right? It's really getting a vision. Number one, it's helping you to figure out how you define health. What does your healthiest year yet even mean to you? Because I think a lot of women hear that, but they don't actually pause to consider what that means to them. So we help you get really clear on your own definition, who you need to become in order to make that happen, where your gaps are, how to come up with some strategies, how to start rumbling with failure, because you're going to.
Yeah.
So it's not a fitness or a nutrition challenge. It's a huge mindset shift. And it's very much a thought and emotional management program. So it's 5 days. It's a 5-part video series. And there's a little workbook that comes along with it. And yeah, I wish every woman would do it, because I think it would give her such perspective on where she wants to go and why she wants to go there.
Oh, perfect. Well, this is, I'm so glad that the people that are listening to this have the access to this and can get to know you even more, because I've really enjoyed this conversation. So where do people find you?
Yeah, just graceandgrit.com is probably the best place. They can get access to the podcast there and all the things.
Everything.
But yeah, graceandgrit.com, super easy.
Oh, Courtney, I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And I am certain that we all will benefit from our healthiest year yet. So go on and grab it and let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.